ঠিক আছে?
Okay. Guys, look at the board. So today we are going to start class 1. Class 1. This is management accounting. আসতেছে? দেখা যায়? So we are going to start management accounting. CIMA, ACCA, in both the cases we have management accounting courses. And inshallah, we'll sit for this exam in this June, first segment of June, right? So today we're going to start class 1 and the chapter is cost classification and behavior. Cost classification and behavior. Actually, I go through 20 class depending upon the course. In course there are number 1, 2, 3, 4 in different segment. I will discuss according to the segment. So it will helpful for you or it will beneficial for you when you review these courses at your home, right? So today we are going to start the chapter that is cost classification and behavior. So according to the course note, number one is significance. Significance of cost classification and behavior. This is the first segment. Significance, what's the important or why we need to go through this chapter, cost classification and behavior? That is importance or significance. Suppose think yourself, you are a business people, you are doing business or you are dealing business with something, right? In that case, initially you have to take decision what will be the pricing or what will be the price, the product or the service to which you are dealing with, right? Suppose you are the manufacturer of this pen, you need to find out the price of this pen, what will be the price. So if you want to set the price, you need initially what is the cost of manufacturing this unit and how much profit you deserve, right? So significance, you need to do the costing. Why? For pricing decision. For making pricing decision. At the same time, stock valuation. So there are several options, there are several things for which you need to do the costing segment. But within this, the most important part is the most important thing for why we are going to do this cost classification behavior. That is, if you are a business people, your ultimate goal is to generate profit, right? And each and every year you have to enhance the percentage of profit or portion of profit if you want to survive in the market. That means ultimate goal is generating profit, right? Normally there are two different ways how you can generate profit. Normally, for this foundation level we can think of that. Number one, that is I can increase the price. Suppose the selling price initially of this pen is 5 taka. If I set the selling price 7 taka today, it will obviously generate more profit, right? And another is, but it is not the feasible way. Why? Because if you increase the price of your commodity or price of your service to which you are dealing with, it may be possible that you will lose your customer because some competitors are also there. You have to survive with your competitor, right? So this is not the feasible way. The another way of increasing the profit portion is if you can manage yourself to lower the manufacturing cost of the thing. Suppose as for example, the manufacturing cost of this pen is 5 taka and set out selling price is suppose 7 taka. So what is the profit? 2 taka. Now if you manage yourself to control or squeeze this portion of cost, if you can do this by 3 taka rather 5 taka, it will obviously increase the profit portion. So it is one of the most economical and feasible way. So from this discussion, we know or we are very much clear about the significance or importance of cost classification. That is, if you want to control over the cost, if you want to squeeze or reduce the cost, you need to know the classification, what are the different types of costs are there and how they behave. Only then you can control over it. So this is the significance of cost classification in behavior. This is why we have to go through this chapter. Understand? Okay. Then number 2. So cost classification is must. Cost classification behavior is must. Then in segment 2, model of classification. Cost classification is a systematic approach. It's a kind of systematic approach. What kind of systematic approach? Through this approach, we actually try to group the cost, or we try to classify the cost according to some specific group or some specific basis. As for example, suppose if you student have to be divided, male, female, so it's the kind of classification process. So cost also can be classified in different segmented or different groups, right? So normally there are 4 different ways how you can classify the cost. There are 4 different bases or 4 different ways how you can classify the cost. That is element, nature, behavior, and end of the day, that is function. These are not the classification. These are the way of classifying the cost. What kinds of cost? Organizational cost that you have to face to run your organization, to operate your business organization. Elementary basis. So these are the bases. According to elementary basis, cost are 3 kinds. Material, labor, and other expenses. As I will give you the notes, that's why I will use the symbol. Okay. So according to the elementary basis, we can classify the cost equal to material, labor, and other expenses. Think yourself. If you want to operate any kinds of business, you need material, different kinds of material. Then you need to employ labor forces, and you have to pay for that. Except material and labor forces, gas bill, rent, distribution cost, sales distribution, different kinds of cost may be there. So except material and labor, there are some other expenses. As a whole, these are the total expenses to run any kinds of business. So this is the way of cost classification according to elements. মুখস্থ করার কিছু আছে? আমার বাইরের লোকজন এই বাংলা বুঝবে না, বাইরের যারা স্টুডেন্ট, তো বাংলা কিছু কিছু বলি। ওকে, then natural. According to nature, attributes, attitude, nature. According to nature, costs are direct and indirect. We'll discuss later on. According to behavior, costs are mainly variable and fixed cost. There are some specific cost which is called semi-variable or mixed semi-variable. And according to function, functional and non-functional. So this is the model of cost classification. Now we will go through elaborately of this model. Okay? Number 1, element. Material. According to elementary basis, the total organizational cost can be classified in these three different classes or segments. Number one, material cost. Cost or expenses you have to acquire all kinds of material which is required to run your business. Suppose think yourself, you are the manufacturer of this pen, right? To manufacture this pen, there are several kinds of ingredients or materials you need to purchase. Even you need to purchase plant and machineries, you need to purchase table, chairs, pen, etc. etc. So as a whole, these all are actual material costs. Labor forces. To manufacture or produce these kinds of things, you need to employ labor forces and you have to pay for that. As a whole, even there are different kinds of labor, but as a whole, that is labor cost. Other expenses, except material and labor forces, there are some other expenses, other different kinds of expenses are there. We'll go through. Those all are under other expenses. So these are the elementary basis of cost classification. Right? Then number two. এখানে আছে এটা ব্ল্যাক হয়ে গেলে আমাকে বলবা, হ্যাঁ? এখানে উঠতেছে হ্যাঁ ছোট না ভিডিওটা ঠিক আছে। নাম্বার টু, নেচার। Nature. According to nature, cost, this is one of the important basis of classification. Nature, that is direct and indirect. Depend upon the nature, depend upon the attributes. Any kinds of cost or any kinds of organizational cost are classified in these two different segments. One is direct, another is indirect. You know the meaning direct or indirect, right? So what do you mean by direct? See, this is the cost unit, right? This is the specific product. If you look at that, you can say you need tin, you need different kinds of plastic, you need different kinds of ink or ingredients to manufacture this. So these are the material which are directly related in producing these kinds of unit. So if you think about the material, so these are the direct material, because without these kinds of material you cannot produce this unit, single unit. There are also table chair, those are also material, but those are not related with this, indirectly related, because except that you cannot produce that. So direct cost and indirect cost. Initially, for our own betterment, the theory is direct cost means all those kinds of costs which are directly related or directly involved in producing or in production process. Those are direct cost. So material may be direct material cost, indirect material cost. Labor may also be direct labor cost, indirect labor cost. As for example, the assembly workers or the operator, machine operator, they are operating the machine directly. That's why their cost is direct labor cost. But sweeper, truck driver, distributor workers, supervisors, they are not producing the things, right? So they are also worker, but they are indirect labor forces. Even other expenses may be direct other expenses, indirect other expenses. As for example, direct other expenses. As for example, royalty. Suppose you are a writer, right? I want to publish one of your written books. In that case, if I want to publish books, for each and every publication, I have to provide you the royalty. Without royalty, you will not provide me the authority to publish the books, right? That's why royalty is a kind of other expenses, direct. So, that is all about direct. Indirect, we have already discussed. That is costs which are not directly related to the production process. Those all are indirect costs, right? Now, এটা most probably segment 3. Actually segment 4. Nature. এখানে in this segment we'll also go through some specific notes. In your exam hall or in your exam examination, you guys will be provided these kinds of question, conceptual question. What kinds of conceptual question? You guys will be provided a specific cost, and the questionnaire asked you what type of cost, direct or indirect. So, from a specific given cost, if you want to notify that is a direct or indirect, we have already discussed, but there are some other criteria, you have to memorize that. That's why this is extra important. If you want to say a cost is a direct, in that case the cost should have 3 different criteria at the same time. If any of the characteristics or any of the attributes is absent, in that case that will be indirect cost. Number 1, we have already discussed. That is, the cost should be directly involved with the production process. This is the first one, first criteria, to be direct cost. Number 2. So, number 2, the cost should be easily identifiable from the finished item or cost unit. This is the cost unit. Suppose t-shirt, as for example t-shirt, is the cost unit, right? So price of a t-shirt is, suppose as for example $20. At the backward, there is a specific small amount of label, which is not easily identifiable, right? Label is not easily identifiable. That's why still the label is directly related to the production process, but still it is kind of indirect cost because it is not easily identifiable. Then think about the chair. If you think it is a kind of cost unit, the super glue or the staple used in fabrication of the chair, that is not easily identifiable. So these are not direct costs, but still they are directly related with the production process. Then number 3, the cost should have economical value with the finished item. As for example, think about the production of a chair. What's the production cost of a chair? As for example, the production of this chair, the production cost of this chair is $100. Suppose, as for example, $100. Within this $100, the super glue which is used for fabrication, it has a specific amount of, suppose, 5 cents. 5 cents doesn't have any kinds of economical value in comparison to $100, right? So that's why these are directly related to the production process, but it's still indirect cost. So if you want to notify any kinds of cost as a direct, the cost should have 3 different criteria. Related to the production process, it should have economical value with the finished item, and it should be easily identifiable from the finished unit of item. Only then you can say this is a kind of direct cost. Otherwise, that is indirect cost. Then classification by behavior. This is the most important classification of cost, because you guys can assume different kinds of mathematical problem actually comes from this, or different kinds of graphical model actually comes from this discussion. This is segment 5. Behavior. Behavior means how the cost actually behave in different level of production decision. Depend upon that criteria, we can classify cost into either variable cost or fixed cost. What's the behavior? Suppose, think yourself, you take a decision to manufacture 10 of these kinds of pen, and one of your friend decided to manufacture 20 of these kinds of pen. So as the decision changes, the material required to produce that will be also changes, right? So depend upon the decision or what amount of production you are going to start, depend upon that, some cost will vary as you change the decision. If you want to produce 10 units rather than 5 units, different kinds of costs are there which will also changes, either increase or decreases. Those are variable cost. Fixed cost, some costs are there which will not be changes whatever the level of activity within the specific relevant range or capacity. Those are fixed cost. Think an example. Plastic required to manufacture these kinds of pen. If you decide to manufacture 20 pen rather 10 pen, the total plastic required will be changes. That's why material is a kind of variable cost. The machine which you install to manufacture these kinds of pen, the capacity of the machine is to produce 10 units. As for example, 10 units. Either you produce 5 units or 6 units or 7 or up to 10. The fixed cost is same. That's why we said that is fixed cost remain unchanged or unaffected within a specific range of activity. Then if you combine these two different costs, variable and fixed, so cost may be variable or fixed. If you combine these two kinds of cost, it will provide you a specific kind of or different kinds of cost, which is called semi-variable cost. Semi-variable or mixed cost in some cases. Mixed, that is, it's a blend of two different kinds of cost. That's why this is mixed cost, or this is another name is semi-variable cost. There is another specific kinds of cost in the case of fixed cost, which is called step fixed cost. Step fixed cost. So now we will go to elaborate discussion of this segment. Number 1, focus the graph I will draw, because these graphs are very much important. Number 1, variable cost. Variable cost that varies with the level of activity or with the level of decision changes. Those are variable cost. Normally, there are two different kinds of variable cost here. One is variable cost per unit, which is symbolized by smaller v. And another is greater V, that is total variable cost. Plastic required to produce this pen, each and every pen will be same. Suppose 2 taka plastic is required, that is variable cost per unit. And another is total variable cost. Total variable cost means total variable cost required to produce a specific number of units. And this is the result of multiplication of V and Q. Suppose your variable cost per unit is 2 taka. If you produce 10 units, your total variable cost is 20 taka. If you produce 30 units, in that case your total variable cost is 30 into 2, that is 60 taka. That's why we can say variable cost per unit is a fixed unit. It behaves just like the fixed cost. Whatever the specific kind of activity, either you produce 10 pen, 20 pen or more than that, each unit requires same amount of plastic or same amount of ingredients, right? That is variable cost per unit. But total variable cost changes as you are changing this quantity. That's why we say that is variable cost is a kind of fixed unit and total variable cost is a kind of variable unit. Now the graph. In the graph segment, according to horizontal axis, we plot the level of activity. Level of activity. And according to vertical axis, we plot the cost. And this tangible amount, this is called variable cost per unit. This is the tangent value, variable cost per unit. And this straight line, this is called TVC, total variable cost. Think yourself. If you produce 1 pen, your variable cost per unit is this much, suppose 2 taka. If you produce 2 pen, your variable cost, if your variable cost per is 2 taka, in that case your total variable cost here is 4 taka. Initially it was 2 taka, then 4 taka. That means increasing in a constant rate. That's why this is a straight line equation. Right? So that's why this is called total variable cost line. It will always start from the 0. Why? If you do not produce any kinds of thing, there is no kinds of variable cost. As you increasing the level of production, a specific constant amount of V will be charged multiplied with the number of units produced. That's why this is straight line relation. Now this is the normal way. Normally we can think that is total variable cost is a kind of a straight line. There may be some exceptions. There may be some exceptions. Some exceptions. See, this is a curved line. Curved line. In this segment, this is also this. This is also this. This is graph A. This is graph B. Why the line is put like this way? Okay. In some cases, think about the supplier who is providing discount offer in case of bulk purchase. That is, if you purchase more, in that case, per unit purchase price will be lesser. It's a kind of discount offer. In the case of discount offer, when you are purchasing this much, your variable cost is this much. As you are increasing the purchase, the line is sloped downwards. Why? Because per unit variable cost become lesser than the previous variable cost charged in the previous unit. That's why the line is sloped downward. And this is the opposite. Here, it may be possible in some cases your material is scarce, labor force is scarce. Scarce means inadequate. Inadequate means what amount you require, that is not possible. Very much shortage, labor force is shortage, material is shortage. So if you want to purchase more, you have to provide more. You have to provide more purchase cost. As you are purchasing more, per unit cost or per unit variable cost added more than the previous addition. আগে যা ছিল তার থেকে বেশি add হচ্ছে. That's why the line is slope upward. বোঝা গেছে? But there is no sort of constant relationship. That is proportional relationship. That's why this is curved line. But if there is a constant relationship, then the line will be straight line. So this is a possible situation. Then another important thing is that is the variable cost. বোঝা গেছে? Now we will look forward the fixed cost. Fixed cost. Just the same way. The horizontal axis represent the unit produced and the vertical axis represent the cost required. Fixed cost. Suppose, think an example. You hire a truck to deliver some specific goods from Khulna to Dhaka. There is a specific amount of hiring price of that truck, as for example 20,000. The truck capacity is 5 metric ton to load. Loading capacity is 5 metric ton. If you load 2 metric ton, 3 metric ton, 4 up to 5 metric ton, your cost is 20,000 BTT. Right? But if you want to deliver more than 5 metric ton, that is, if you want to go beyond the capacity, which is also called relevant range. In that case, another truck to be hired. Suppose you want to deliver 10 metric ton or 7 metric ton, as for example. In that case, you need to hire another truck. So another fixed cost will be there. And that relevant range is now 10 metric ton. Initially, the relevant range is 0 to 5 metric ton. Now it is 10 metric ton. So normally, fixed cost remain unaffected or unchanged within a specific range of activity or the capacity of your machine. If you go or if you want to go beyond the capacity, then another fixed cost will be charged with the previous fixed amount of cost. That's why that is called step fixed cost. So fixed cost may be categorized in step fixed cost as well. It may be increasing or it may be decreasing. বোঝা গেছে? তাহলে now think about the note we have already discussed, that is variable cost is a variable unit. That's why the graph will be just like this one. But variable cost per unit, whatever the production is, it remain constant. That's why it will be just like the fixed cost. So if you guys are asked in the exam hall, what kinds of graph is this? It is the example of fixed cost or variable cost per unit. Both are true. Then another important thing is for fixed cost. We have already discussed this is the graph of fixed cost. This is another graph of fixed cost. This is called FCR unit. Fixed cost per unit. Suppose think an example. Today you buy a machine. The machine cost is, suppose as for example, $10. This is a fixed cost. The machine capacity is to produce 10 units. 10 taka, 10 units. If you produce 5 pen, the fixed cost $10 will be distributed between the 5 units. In that case, fixed cost per unit is 10 taka divided by 5, 2 taka. But if you produce 10 units, in that case the same amount of fixed cost will be distributed 10 units rather than 5 units. So per unit fixed cost is now 10 by 10 1 taka. That means as you are increasing the production volume or capacity, fixed cost per unit will go down, decreases. See the graph. Suppose this is the first level. When you are producing 5 unit, cost per unit is this much. Bye bye. High five. So complete today's class. আমি ABC লিখতেছি, নাম্বারিং লিখতেছি। Okay, এখানে দেখো। So if you produce 5 of the pen, in that case your cost per unit is this much. But as you are increasing the number of units, cost per unit is here the cost per unit is reduced than the previous one. 2 taka. According to our example, 2 taka, then 1 taka. That's why the fixed cost per unit is stops downwards. নিচের দিকে। তাহলে একটা জিনিস একটু পার্থক্য দেখো, এইটা what's the difference between these three graphs? এর সাথে অনেকটা ভুল আছে, but the ultimate difference is here this line is not segmented any of the axes, but here the line is there is a segment point with the origin. This is called origin. That means if you do not produce any kinds of things, no kinds of variable cost is there. But here, this is fixed cost per unit. বুঝা গেছে? Now,
last variable cost is
suppose this is, what does it mean? In this situation, take an example, there is a discount offer by the supplier. Huge amount of material is there available, so supplier is providing a discount offer. That means as you are purchasing more, per unit variable cost added the previous, that's why the total variable cost, right? The per unit variable cost added the previous, that is less than the previous one. Initially, when you are offering 5, per unit variable cost is suppose 3 taka. If you go beyond 5, suppose 10, here per unit variable cost is listen 3, 2. That's why the line is sloping. টোটাল ভ্যারিয়েবল কস্ট ইনক্রিজিং, বাট ইনক্রিজিং এ ডিক্রিজিং ওয়ে, বাড়তেছে কিন্তু কোনভাবে? কমাভাবে বাড়ছে। ইনিশিয়ালি it was increases 5 টাকা, now it is increasing 3 টাকা, then 2 টাকা, then 1 টাকা, increasing but in a decreasing way. That's why the slope is just like this one. But here the situation is when the material is scarce, to purchase per unit material you have to pay more than the previous one. That's why as you are increasing the unit per unit cost at the previous, that is more than the previous one. That's why that is upward. Okay. So this is all about fixed and variable cost. Now semi-variable cost. Semi-variable cost. This is the combination of both variable and fixed cost we have already discussed. That is, if you combine all kinds of variable and fixed cost as a whole, then to provide you the semi-variable cost. So what will be the graph look like? Suppose this is according to horizontal axis we'll plot as well as the activity, volume of production. According to vertical axis we'll plot different kinds of cost. Think we guys take a decision to establish a plant to manufacture kinds of things. After taking this decision, initially before the production starts, we need to install machineries, we need to buy or we need to install we need to buy some specific land, then build up the infrastructure. So before the production, a specific amount of cost is already occurred, which is called fixed cost. Right? Now you are in this position. The thing is, suppose we are in Bangladesh. The thing is, for different kinds of portal or political pressure, if you have to leave your organization, what is your loss? This amount of cost remains as a kind of loss. That is, fixed cost remains as a kind of loss. Now, you want to start production from this. You do not produce any kinds of things. As you start producing, a specific kind of variable cost added. So this is TVC, total variable cost. Initially আমরা বলে আসছিলাম ভ্যারিয়েবল কস্ট কোথা থেকে শুরু হয়? 0 থেকে। But here fixed cost উপর থেকে শুরু হচ্ছে। Why? Because in this position if you don't produce any kinds of things, still fixed cost is your cost. Now as you are producing more, another amount of fixed production and fixed cost will be there. So what will be the total cost? This portion is called variable cost, which is called VQ. So if you add this variable cost portion with the fixed portion, it will provide you the TC, total cost of anything. Right? Think about the post-paid line. In the case of post-paid line, if you do not make any kinds of call within the total month, still you have to provide a specific line rent, right? And then with every call there is a specific unit charge which is called variable. So end of the month, what will be your total cost? Fixed line rent plus variable unit charges. When you add up these two things, it will provide you the total cost, TC. That means TC, we can say TC equal to total variable cost plus fixed cost, or V equal to VQ plus FC. So it is a kind of equation we will go through later on. So we can say any kinds of total cost is an example of semi-variable cost. বোঝা গেল? No problem? আমি একটু বাংলা কম বলতেছি তাই আমার যে বাইরের স্টুডেন্ট তো এই যে বাংলা এগুলো কিছু বুঝবে না। তোমরা আমার অল্প স্টুডেন্ট, আমার স্টুডেন্ট বাইরে বেশি, সো অল্প তোমরা হ্যাবিচুয়াল হয়ে যাবে, স্টুডেন্ট হয়ে যাবে আস্তে আস্তে, সমস্যা নেই। আর যেখানে বুঝতে পারবো না জিজ্ঞেস করবো, কোনো সমস্যা নেই। বোঝা যাচ্ছে? মনে করতেছে? ওকে, then Last one, 6, classification by function. According to function, cost of productive activity, cost of non-productive activity or non-functional cost. Functional basis of cost classification we have already discussed. Just memorize or sharpen your memory. Whatever the discussion we have up to, in every cases we use the word production related. Production related. That's why these all are production cost. Now, we have already manufactured the packets of pen. If you want to sell this pen, you have to go for huge amount of advertisement. Advertisement cost, sales and distribution cost, sales commission, research and development, administration. These all are costs which are not production related. These are non-productive cost, non-functional cost. So some are production cost, some are non-productive cost, non-production cost, research and development, administration, sales and marketing, promotional, different kinds of costs which are not production related. Those are non-productive costs. So this is the end of classification and behavior. Now our main task is to generate the cost card. 7. Cost card. When we start discussion of this class, we say that why we need to go for costing, why we need to go for cost classification behavior. So end of the day, I can find out the cost of manufacturing this unit. So I can set out a specific kind of price of this unit. So now the thing is prepare the or create the cost card. Right? How you can do this? Direct material, direct labor, and direct other expenses. We have already discussed. When you add up these kinds of direct cost, these 3 kinds of direct cost, it will provide you prime cost. And from the discussion, if you guys are very much clear about the conceptual part, in that case it is very much clear to you. All these are variable costs as well. Right? Direct material, if you increase the production volume, direct material can go. So when you add up all kinds of direct costs, it will provide you the prime cost. So prime cost is a kind of variable cost. And these are variable production related cost. Variable production related cost. So we have add up all kinds of production related variable cost. Right? Now we have to add indirect cost, production related indirect cost, indirect labor, indirect material, indirect other expenses, which is also called overheads. So production related cost may be direct, may be indirect. So when you add up all kinds of direct and indirect costs, this will provide you the total production cost. Total production cost. So up to this level, this is called functional basis of cost or production related cost. Now we have to add up non-productive activity cost, sales distribution, administration, right, research and development. So then we have to add the cost of non-productive activity. After adding this cost of non-productive activity, it will provide you, the total cost of manufacturing a specific thing or providing a specific kind of service. So what's the sequence? Initially you have to find out the prime cost. What is the prime cost? Prime cost is the sum of all kinds of direct production related cost. Then you have to add indirect production related indirect cost to the prime cost. It will provide you the total production cost. Then you have to add up all kinds of non-productive activity cost. Then end of the day you have total cost. Now the fact is, In doing the pricing decision, what will be the pricing decision? Pricing decision. Total cost, then you have to add a desired level of profit. Suppose as for example, total cost is 10 taka and your desired profit is 2 taka, what will be your selling price? Your selling price is 12 taka. So this is the way how the organization actually set up the selling price of their individual unit or individual services. বোঝা গেছে? কঠিন মাথার উপর দিয়ে গেছে? It depends upon your mentor whether the course is or paper is hard or soft. So এইটুকু কি সবাই বোঝা গেছে? সবাই বুঝতে পারছো? ওকে, কত বাজে? Now we'll go through another segment, that is this is the cost estimation model. This is 8. এটা চলতেছে? Estimation model. Cost estimation model, or you can say cost forecasting model. Suppose you are the manager of a business organization. You need to forecast different types of cost, or you need to forecast the manufacturing cost that can be comes from. That is all about called cost estimation or cost forecasting. There are 3 different ways according to your syllabus how you can forecast the cost. These are high-low method. One is called high-low method. Another is called scatter graph or line of base fit, and another we will discuss, that is least square. So these are the 3 different ways how you can forecast or estimate about the total cost of producing any kinds of thing. Just for example, suppose you are the manager. Now you need to forecast what will be your total cost in the next forthcoming period if you take the decision to produce 100 of a specific kind of thing. Actually, what will be the total cost? You need to forecast that. So you can forecast by using these 3 models. So we will go through that. Initially, we will go through a, that is high-low method. The name is high-low method. We have already discussed, that is total cost of anything equal to BQ plus FC, right? If you can plot the numerical value of these 2 components, as for example, TC equal to 2Q plus 10, just like this. That means if you can find out the numerical value of these 2 components, then it is a kind of rule. By plotting each individual amount of Q, you can find out the TC, right? So that's why initially we use high-low method. By using high-low method, you can find out this variable cost per unit from a given historical data. Suppose, as for example, suppose unit cost, a unit 50 to 100, 90 to $50. Suppose these are the historical data. Historical data means data already absorbed. Now, from this data, by seeing this data, you want to forecast what will be the cost of producing 30 units. Right? The model is just like this one. So we can use the high-low method. According to high-low method, high-low variable cost per unit. আমি লিখবো না যেহেতু এখানে দেয়া আছে কোর্স করতে। Variable cost per unit equal to cost of high activity minus cost of low activity. That's why the name is high-low method. Cost of high activity within the historical data, what will be your highest activity? 19. What is the relative cost of producing 19? 250. So cost of high activity is 250. And what will be the cost of low activity? Low activity is 10, and to producing 10 unit, your cost is $100. That is 100. So in the numerator segment, we use the cost of high activity and cost of low activity, difference between these two. In denominator segment, we use high activity. What is our high activity? That is 90. And what is our low activity? That is 10. Right? So by using this, we can find out V. বোঝা গেল? Okay. We'll discuss an example. According to your course note, example 1. তোমরা সবাই যদি পসিবল হয় ছোট ছোট ল্যাপটপ পাওয়া যায় যেগুলো মুভ করা যায়, আর যে কি বলে নোট প্যাড এই টাইপের, যদি এইগুলো অ্যারেঞ্জ করতে পারো আমার জন্য ক্লাস নেওয়ার সুবিধা হয়ে যাবে। আমি সফট কপিটা আগে দিয়ে দিই। এখন আমি তোমাদের দিয়ে দিই। According to your course note, the example is just like this one. Output is 200, 400 and 300 and 400, and related cost is 7,000, 8,000 and 9,000. So just like the previous model, you can use this historical data to find out the variable cost per unit, right? Here the variable cost per unit is calculated 10. Cost of high activity minus, just like this. Now by using this, I have to use either low activity or high activity cost to find out the fixed cost. How? The way is we have discussed that is total cost of anything equal to VQ plus FC. So suppose total cost of 400. It is provided, that is 9,000. This 9,000 can be converted. We have already found, that is 10. Then what should be the Q quantity here? Quantity here is 400. 400. I need to find out the fixed cost. By using the model, I can have fixed cost FC equal to 5,000. So by using the variable cost per unit either in the low activity or high activity, you can find out the fixed cost. Karon problem আছে? বোঝা গেছে? So now, as you have both variable cost per unit and fixed cost per unit, you can find out the straight line equation. The equation was TC will be V, our calculated V is 10Q plus calculated FC is 5,000. So this is the high-low method, how we can find out the value of this equation. Now, if you guys are asked what will be the TC of 600 units, you can find out that by putting this value in quantity, right? So what will be the TC of 600? That is 10 into 600 plus 5,000. It will provide the total cost. So this is the very first problem in your mathematical class. বোঝা গেছে? তোমাদের বোরিং লাগতেছে ক্লাস? বোরিং লাগলে উপায় নেই। ইফ ইউ ওয়ান্ট টু সিট ফর দ্য এক্সাম টু, বলে আমি প্রত্যেকটা ক্লাসকে আমাকে একটা সেগমেন্ট আকারে করতে হবে। ওকে, দেন আসো এক্সাম্পলগুলো শর্ট করে দিচ্ছি আমি, এখানে শর্ট করে দেওয়া আছে, বাসায় গিয়ে এখানে গোছু করতে। high-low method plus step fixed cost. Normally আমরা দেখলাম কিভাবে করতে পারি, high-low method use করতে পারি, right? In situation, you guys have to deal with the step fixed cost as well. This is example 2 according to your course note. Example 2. দেয়া আছে এরকম activity cost. Activity is 4,000, 6,000 and 7,500. The cost is 40. The cost is 50,000 and the cost is 54,800. This is the model, just like the previous one. But there is another clue, or there is an additional sentence added with the previous one. That is, which is said, that is variable cost per unit is constant within this activity range. But the fact is, there is a step up of 10% in the total fixed cost where the activity level exceed 5,500 units. Within this range, your variable cost per unit will be constant. Same. But when you go beyond 5,500, it's a relevant range. So in these kinds of problem, initially you have to set out this range. The range is 5,500 is given. কোথায় বসতে পারে 5,500? After 4,000 is 5,500. Now we can divide this group. This is another group and this another group. Right? We divide these two groups depend upon the range provided. From this range, you have high-low things in this group. এখান থেকে পাচ্ছ। এখানে কি আছে? এখানে একটাই আছে। But here there are two different components. One is low activity and one is high activity. So you have to find out variable cost and fixed cost from this range. This is the difference from the simple. Here, variable cost will be cost of high activity, that is 54,800 minus cost of low activity. This is not 40,000. 50,000. Divide by high activity 7,500, low activity 6,000. So the value will be 3.2. Can you guys understand the differences between the simple and the step fixed cost when added? Okay. So this is the variable cost per unit. Now, by use this variable cost per unit either in the low activity or in the high activity, you can find out the fixed cost, right? Suppose here fixed cost is আমরা কোন রেঞ্জে যাব? By using this range, আমি শুধু fixed cost amount লিখে দিই। The fixed cost will be 30,800 করে দেয়া আছে। So fixed cost FC of this level is 30,800, right? But in this range, fixed cost will be different because according to problem, before 5,500 there is a fixed cost. If you go beyond 5,500, then there is a 10% step up of the fixed cost. Previous সাথে কত percent? 10% add হবে. Understand? So we can find out this fixed portion of cost in two different ways. দুইভাবে করতে পারি। আমরা এখানে একভাবেই দেখব। সেটা হচ্ছে the mathematical problem already said variable cost per unit in all these things will be constant. So variable cost সবার জন্য কি হবে? সমান হবে। So by using the variable cost in this range, the fixed cost is 30,800. By using the same variable cost here, we can find out another fixed cost. See? Here, fixed cost 40,800 minus variable cost variable cost 3.2, here the activity range is 4,000.